Welcome to the Explainer. So, today we are diving into an absolute masterclass on cultivating one of summer's most rewarding superfoods right in your own space. If you've ever looked at a patch of grass and thought, I want to turn that into a thriving, fruit-bearing oasis, well, you are in the exact right place. Let's get right into it.
Just imagine this for a second. It's a warm July afternoon, you step out your back door, reach up, and pluck a perfectly sun-ripened, intensely sweet apricot straight from your very own tree. It's warm from the sun, ridiculously juicy, and absolutely packed with vitamins. Growing apricots at home offers an unbelievably bountiful harvest, and the best part? It's completely achievable no matter how much gardening experience you actually have.
To get you to that perfect harvest, we're going to follow a really clear roadmap today. We'll start with an introduction and variety selection, then move to climate, soil, and planting. After that, we'll cover irrigation and proper fertilizing, pruning for a healthy crown, tackling diseases, pests and solutions, and finally we'll wrap up with harvest and final tips.
Starting off with Section 1, Introduction and Variety Selection.
So, apricots are these sun-loving powerhouses completely packed with vitamin A, which, as you know, is a fantastic antioxidant. But the foundation of a truly great harvest isn't just about throwing a seed in the ground, it's about strategically selecting the perfect variety for your specific space and palate. Now, looking at some popular varieties like Petra, Roxana, Kyoto, and Early Orange, you'll notice a key feature. They are all self-pollinating or self-fertile. This is basically a game changer for backyard growers. Why? Because it means you literally don't need a massive orchard to get fruit. Even if you only have space for a single, solitary tree, you're going to get a crop. Whether you're going for the Roxana because of its huge, gorgeous fruits, or maybe the Kyoto for its incredible cold resistance, picking a self-pollinator practically guarantees success in a much smaller footprint.
Moving right along to Section 2, Climate, Soil, and Planting.
When it comes to climate, the apricot tree has this really fascinating, almost contradictory personality. Check this out. During its winter dormancy, it can survive deep freezes all the way down to minus 28 degrees Celsius. But here's the catch. Once it wakes up and blossoms in the early spring, a tiny, mild frost of just -1 to -3 degrees can entirely wipe out those delicate flowers. And if you lose the flowers, you lose your entire harvest. That's exactly why your planting location matters so much. You also absolutely need deep, well-drained soil with a pH somewhere between 5.5 and 7.5. Apricots completely despise heavy, waterlogged clay. If the roots just sit in water, they'll literally drown from root asphyxiation, so proper drainage is key.
Okay, so how do we actually get this tree into the ground properly? It's a simple three-step process. First, preparation. You've got to break up that soil deeply and mix in plenty of rich, well-rotted compost. Give those roots a serious nutritional head start right out of the gate. Second is timing. Sure, you can plant in the spring, but planting in autumn right before the ground freezes is a total pro move. It lets the root system establish itself all winter long. And third, you have to respect the spacing. You might look at a tiny little sapling and think, wow, a 4 or 5 meter gap is way too much. But in ideal conditions, apricot roots can grow 7 to 9 meters deep. You really need to give them the room to breathe and expand.
Next up, Section 3, Irrigation and Proper Fertilizing.
You know, apricots are what we call heavy feeders. They crave a really complex menu of macro and micro elements. We're talking nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and calcium, alongside trace minerals like iron, zinc, manganese, and boron. Nitrogen, in particular, is your tree's absolute best friend for steady, robust growth. Now, when it comes to watering, the golden rule is deep, infrequent hydration. You really want to monitor your late-ripening varieties, especially during those dry, scorching August spells. But keeping in mind what we just talked about, water is life, sure, but too much of it will definitely choke the roots. It's all about finding that perfect balance.
All right, Section 4, Pruning for a Healthy Crown.
So there are actually two very different jobs that pruning does for your tree throughout the year. In the winter and early spring, you're essentially playing architect. You want to aggressively cut back your 3 or 4 main skeletal branches, up to 2/3 or even 3/4 of their length, to build a really strong, sturdy frame. But the real magic happens with summer, or what we call green pruning, in July. By snipping back the strong new shoots by 1/3 to 1/2, you physically stop the tree from getting wild and leggy. This stabilizes the branches so they literally don't snap under the weight of future fruit, and it forces the tree to push its energy inward. This creates those dense fruit-bearing buds right where you actually want them.
Now for Section 5, Diseases, Pests, and Solutions.
I really want to draw your attention here to a silent killer known as apoplexy. This is a highly destructive, frankly poorly understood condition that causes the sudden wilting and total death of individual branches, or sometimes even the entire tree, right at the start of the growing season. It's super insidious because the early warning signs are incredibly subtle. You might just see a mild yellowing of the leaves, which is known as chlorosis, or maybe some minor disruptions in flowering. But by the time those leaves suddenly wilt, it's very often too late to save the plant.
So, to actually defend your tree from apoplexy, as well as brown rot, also known as Monilia, and various pests like twig borers, weevils, and leaf-eating caterpillars, your execution has to be absolutely spot on. For instance, you need to apply a second post-bloom spray exactly 10 to 12 days after your first one. Why that specific window? Well, because brown rot thrives in the cool, wet weather of May, and hitting that precise 10 to 12 day mark protects the rapidly dividing cells in the young fruit. Also, a quick pro tip, always spray on calm, sunny days when the temperature is hovering right around 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. And as always, please double-check your labels for compatibility before you spray anything. Finally, Section 6. Harvest and Final Tips.
A little bit of strategic planning with your harvest timeline can literally keep your kitchen stocked all summer long. If you happen to have the space to plant a few different varieties, you don't just get a quick one-week explosion of fruit. Instead, you can start picking the intensely aromatic early orange in late June. From there, you move right on to Roxana and Petra in early July, transition over to Kyoto mid-month, and finally harvest your late varieties like Silestrenska all the way through August. It creates this amazing, continuous, rolling bounty.
And just how much of a bounty are we actually talking about here? Well, 70 to 80. That is the number of kilograms a single, well-maintained, mature apricot tree can yield in just one season. I mean, that is a massive amount of food. That's more than enough for fresh eating, baking, canning, making jars of jam, and still having plenty left over to share with all your neighbors. All of that just from one happy tree hanging out in your backyard.
Of course, as with all things in nature, we do have to ground our expectations just a bit. Your specific gardening results are naturally going to vary based on your local microclimate, your soil's unique profile, and, totally unpredictable weather patterns. The guidelines we've walked through today are derived from expert agronomists, but consulting with local gardening experts in your specific region is always an invaluable next step for fine-tuning your backyard orchard.
It really is amazing to think that with just a bit of strategic pruning and precise timing, a single sapling can transform some soil and sunlight into an 80-kilo bounty of absolute superfoods. So, what other paradoxical plants do you think are hiding in plain sight, just waiting to be cultivated? While you think on that, I definitely want to hear from you. Are you out there battling heavy clay soil, or did you accidentally harvest 80 kilos of fruit last year and completely run out of mason jars? Share your biggest triumphs, challenges, or questions down in the comments. Gardening really is a community effort, and we learn best from each other. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy planting.